So here we are, Scott Shelar. Welcome to the line. You are here with Construction Ready. You're the CEO or
President and CEO.
President
Two
and
titles.
CEO.
Yeah.
Wow, 2 titles. And we're here at the Construction Ready and Skills USA. It's your expo.
That's right.
And Skills USA is here, and they're competing. I see some masonry stuff behind us. It's one of my favorite times to do podcasts at this event because you can hear all the trade work in the background. Like, you can't miss it.
Isn't that cool? And I love where we're sitting this year. Last year we were down on the floor.
Yeah.
And this year I'm looking out. I can see over the whole floor. And you're right. I love hearing the sounds and the sights as well. It's really special.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that's important, I think. You know, those sounds aren't bad sounds. Those sounds, that's like, it's progress, it's building, and that kind of segues into even what you and I were talking about off the air. I was here last year. We sat down and you and I did a podcast last year at this event, and it looks different this year. It's like, I feel like it's bigger. And if it's not physically bigger, the players have definitely come to play for sure.
Joshua, it is more full for sure. We're in the same amount of space as last year. We're still in Building A, but we have definitely filled it up more this year than last year. And as you observed earlier, individual companies have really stepped up their game, right? So we have more companies on the floor, but then the companies who are here are like, they're bringing 10 of this instead of 5 of this.
Yeah.
So they've really stepped it up because we have so many students and they want to be able to connect with as many students as possible. So yeah, that's why it feels bigger, is there's more happening. There's more stuff on the floor. There are more people on the floor. We're probably going to be up over 10,000 people this year.
Oh, so, my goodness.
So it definitely feels bigger. I would agree with that.
Well, I can see it. I feel like even the energy that's in the air is different. Like, here we are, we're actually sitting on top of Strack Inc.'s trailer. Underneath us, there are people in simulators and whatnot. 10 Star is over there. They're having people go through the event, and we're sitting here and we're looking out over it. But like, they have a bigger space. They have a podcast set up on top of their trailer, and earlier today, they did a live podcast where people were commenting and whatnot as they're walking by. They had a huge screen down there, sitting down there, that you're able to watch. I love the investment that companies are realizing they need to put into this space. And even that with you, like the new companies that I'm seeing here, and that would be to it being more full. But then even the other companies that are here are like, oh, well, let's double down. Like, and you said that.
Yes.
Like, I mean, the amount of people that they even have here to talk with the kids.
That's right.
It's phenomenal.
That's right. Yeah, I think last year some companies were overwhelmed. You know, they didn't realize there would be so many kids here, and they're like, well, if we're going to talk to all these kids, we need to bring out more of our associates. And Strack's a great example. You know, they get it. You know, Aaron is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
Jonathan, I mean, you know, they understand the importance of investing in the next generation, and it is just so exciting to see. I love Aaron's smile. Anytime I see him, he just has this big old smile because he just really loves connecting with young people, and you see it. You see it in the Strack culture. I mean, it comes from Jonathan Strack, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I actually met him for the first time a few months ago, and
oh, wow.
I was just like, oh, this is where it comes from. This is where that culture comes from, and it was awesome. He actually agreed to come on to our board of directors, which I'm super excited about, to have a guy like Jonathan Strack.
That is awesome.
Isn't that neat? But I just love Strack. I love their investment in this event. I love, working with Aaron. Anyway, yeah, it's awesome.
I was just talking with Jonathan earlier today and saying,
he was here. He was here.
No, we were on the phone.
I got you.
And he is actually away, but I had to talk with him about this, and we were talking about his people and him. He's going to hate that we're talking about him on this. It's going to be awesome. He's like the most humble guy, but what I am so impressed with, and what I said to him today was, whatever it is that he did to figure out how to extend that out to his people, it's like their organization, that humble hands, open heart. I mean, that's who they are, all the way to the core. And that's impressive. I mean, he's away right now, and his team is here living out. And it goes to say what we were saying earlier. It lives out that legacy. That's what it's doing. It's living out that legacy. And I think that's something, specifically in the trades, that's really important that I think we don't realize is it is not a read a book or watch a video, even though, we do sell videos, by the way, but it's a, hey, work alongside me, come work with me, let me mentor you, let me invest in you. You'll love this. I talked with a young woman this morning who was competing this afternoon, I think, in the welding, and she was actually 26. And she was competing. She was, this is her third time being here. And I think she's graduating from the trade school that she's in this year. And she was one of those people talking, like you said, like, this event is reshaping my life. And she's talking about the future that she sees that she can have. And she would say, and these aren't my words, these are her words. She would say that welding and the mentorship from the school has saved her life.
Wow.
And I think that's something that we don't realize. What you and I do today affects people today, tomorrow, the next day, and long after you and I are here. Problem is, Scott, it does that whether it's positive or negative.
Yes.
So I think, so how do we be intentional? Like, seriously, when I know I went on a rant there, but in all reality, you're here and you're working with all these different competitors. And I don't mean the competitors that are actually competing. I mean the people that, when it gets real and it's not in the classroom, are competing in real life. How do we be intentional about that moving forward out of the classroom?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we do have, as you've observed, we have a lot of competing companies on the floor, right? Working together here when normally they would be bidding against each other, and they really maybe their employees end up going from one company to another, and they get upset, because, oh, you're stealing my employee. There's all sorts of that sort of thing happening in our industry. But what's interesting is this issue is so big, this issue of how do we get more people? It's like they have to come together. I think they've figured out that, I think it's just it speaks to how big of an issue this is to tackle. And I think they've realized the only way we're really going to tackle it is to put aside our competitive differences. And the other cool thing, we're actually doing a workforce session right now where competitors are sharing ideas.
Come on.
Right up, in one of the meeting spaces. In fact, that's where John is. They're in there talking and sharing trade secrets because I think they realize if they share their ideas, they're going to learn from each other, and they're going to, a rising tide lifts all boats. I think is where they've landed with it. And so I think that's now, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, just in full transparency. It occasionally, we have companies who are not here because they're here.
Right.
And just whoever it is. And I lose a little sleep over that sometimes. I'm like, gosh, I wish I could. And I never give up. I'm always like trying to figure out the angle to get them to come back. And, well, we could put you over here on the other side of the hall. You wouldn't even have to look at them. And sometimes that works. Or sometimes they might be in the same world, and I'll be like, okay, well, we can create a different world, for your company. And so we have to be creative. But that's part of what I work on throughout the year, is just getting these companies lined up and excited about this event and wanting to be here. So,
well, I think that's something, I can speak to that because this year, one of my competitors is here working, and someone asked me, they're like, was that going to be weird? Is that going to be okay? And it's like, if I could say something to companies that are out there, we're all professionals. So it shouldn't be weird. And maybe it's because I'm a tradesman and my trade is electrical. So I always have to work with everyone else. But the reality is, do the work and don't worry. I have a friend, and he always says this. I totally steal this line from him. My friend Jason says, you either are going to be in the protect and defend mindset or the learn and grow mindset. There are two types of people. And, protect and defend, you aren't going to make it in the long game. You might protect yourself today, you might defend yourself today, but you're not going to learn and grow. And as well as I do, my goodness, the technology that's here even from last year is advanced from last year. That's crazy. And we're here talking, and it's like, if you're not in the learn and grow mindset, then you might not be here next year. Not because you don't want to be, but because you're not here, period.
That's exactly right. Things are changing so rapidly. It really is. It's really scary, but I haven't thought about it that way, but you're exactly right.
Well, that's because it wasn't my statement. I stole it from someone else. So, I just am so blessed that you invited us here last year, and I'm blessed that we're back here this year and that we can continue to promote and support what you guys are doing. Because it's like, this is a place where it's like, when I talked with the young lady this morning, she said, I said to her, well, what do you like about your school? And I thought about this room. And she said, well, everybody that's there wants to be there. Like, they want to be there. And so right out of the gate, we're on the same page. And it's like, these people over here, I'm looking at them because we're not on the floor. We're up here in the crow's nest. They want to be here. They want to be here. The men and women down here, they want to be here. And to that point, if you're listening to this, you should want to be here. I mean, we say at Blackline that it's about lifting the view of the skilled trades. That only can be done with collaboration of people. It's not something that you can do by yourself or I can do by myself. And even if we could, should we? That's really the question. So, we've been talking here for a little bit, and I don't want to move too fast, but this isn't the only event like this. And we've experienced some growth and whatnot. Talk a little bit about your vision. Like, we talked last year, and it's in your podcast, but can you kind of give us, maybe starting way back when, some vision of where you came from and where you're going and what might be coming up even here in April?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I always love to share the history of this event. Yeah. And as I shared last year, this all started in the parking lot of a Home Depot. I mean, really, I can, it's like it was yesterday in some ways. I can still see the Home Depot, shoppers kind of rolling by with their shopping carts, looking and wondering what's going on here in this parking lot. These kids are building something. I mean, that was our audience, really, were the shoppers from the Home Depot. And the other funny thing about that is if you know anything about a parking lot, they're usually poured so that they naturally slope so that the water doesn't puddle up in the parking lot. Well, of course, it was a sloping parking lot. So you can imagine, I'm looking at the Teamworks contest, the poor kids they're just learning, trying to build a level foundation on a sloping parking lot. You can imagine what a challenge that was. But it was awesome. I mean, and the other cool thing about that, the Home Depot, is a huge supporter of ours, and so and they've just gradually increased their support over the years. In those days, they donated some materials, that sort of thing, and now
that is like super business smart.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. Home Depot is supporting you getting more people into the trades, and they sell all the stuff that they need to buy.
Absolutely. Well, one of my favorite stories about that, if you've been to a Home Depot several times, I'm sure, on a Saturday morning, they have the kids' workshops, right?
Yeah.
And, that was actually Bernie Marcus's idea, one of the co-founders of Home Depot.
Really?
Yeah. And, he just passed away back in November, but I just love thinking about that. I think even way back then, that was probably in the 80s, he said, hey, we need to start letting kids, build things at a young age. And I'll talk about vision. Oh my goodness. And I'm sure somewhere in his marketing mind, he's like, okay, but it's also going to get the parents into our stores, right? Yeah. And they're going to buy something. But so Home Depot gets it culturally. And today,
that's a learn and grow mentality.
It is. And to this day, it started with the Home Depot, them donating materials and supplies. Today, their foundation gives us, close to $1 million a year for us to do the work we do. And Bernie Marcus, his foundation supports us, and the Blank Foundation. So it's been powerful. But getting back to the history, it started in a Home Depot parking lot. And the vision was always to grow. We knew we wanted to move beyond a parking lot. And so from there, we moved to a fairgrounds, and that was awesome. It was dusty as heck, and you had to watch where you were stepping because they were using it. They had livestock there the weekend before, but that was a great step up. And then we were like, okay, this is cool, but we want to get into a indoor, space, more like a convention center. And we moved to the Georgia International Convention Center, which is the second largest venue in Georgia, down by the airport. And each year, just roughly, we started with maybe a couple hundred in that Home Depot parking lot. And each year we would add 1,000 people or so to where this year, as I mentioned earlier, we're over 10,000 people now with this event. And so the other thing I'll say is we're at the World Congress Center today, Georgia World Congress Center. This is the third largest venue in the United States.
Wow.
But we're only in about a third of the building, right? We're in building A, really probably even a fourth of the building, because the other buildings are larger than this one.
Okay.
So we're in building A, there's a building B that's bigger than this, and then there's a building C that's bigger than this. And so anyway, our vision is to eventually have the whole complex, right? And we would like to have a whole world of construction in this building, just as an example.
Just in here.
Yeah, and let's move transportation and cosmetology and all the other trades maybe to the other buildings. But that's the long-term vision in Georgia. The cool thing, though, Joshua, is we're also now down in Florida, right? So
I got to be there last year, and I got to see some of the differences.
Yeah.
But that happens when? That you're going to be in Florida?
So April 29th and 30th. So a little over 2 months out. And to your point, it is different. It is smaller than what we have here, right? So last year we had a little over 1,000 people in attendance there, but that's how we started in Georgia, right? We started with a few hundred or so, and we've taken our lessons learned here in Georgia, and we've found some like-minded contractors in Florida, like Duffy and like Petticoat, and actually Strack comes down and helps out down there. And we've said, hey, what we did is we actually invited them up here, and they came up and said, yeah, we want to do this in Florida. Can you help us? And so right there in Jacksonville, Florida, we're at the Prime Osborne Convention Center. And it's just a kind of a mini version of this. We have maybe 8 different worlds, maybe 100 or 150 Skills USA competitors, but we're looking to grow it, and we definitely want more companies involved, and there's still time to get involved in that one.
So when people look at you now, and they look at Construction Ready, and I love you talking about Home Depot and Bernie Marcus, right? That's who you said.
Yes, co-founder, yeah.
The thing that I love about that is, I know who that is, but the legacy that he left wasn't promoting Bernie Marcus.
Right. That's a great point.
I mean, that's something for us to think about. And this legacy that you're building isn't about promoting you, but it's about this. And that's why it's going to continue to grow. But I think there's an important thing to speak to about building legacy. Does it get hard sometimes?
A tiny bit, but because...
tiny bit, he says.
Well, and I'll say this, and I shared this with you earlier, and this might be a little selfish on my part. I've gotten to where I like to ask any young person I see in our industry, how did you get into the industry? And there's a little bit of a selfish motive there, because what I'm finding is a lot of them are somehow connected, even if loosely, to the work that we do.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason I do that is sort of fuel to keep me going, right? Because I've been doing this, Joshua. I can't remember if we talked about this. I started in 90. Now I can't even remember, 96.
Wow.
So what is that? We're coming up on 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And there have definitely been times that I'm like, man, my tank feels a little empty, but you got to keep pushing. And it is those stories.
Yeah.
When here's an example. I had a young man we bought a new house here in Atlanta, and we were having it inspected, and we had a young man come out from it was Shoemate Mechanical. They're a pretty big outfit here in Atlanta, and they were inspecting our heating and air system. It was a young man, and I said, how did you get into the industry? And he told me he went to Maxwell High School, which is one of the construction programs that we support, and he said, and I competed in Skills USA, and I connected with, and it was funny. He's like, I did this event there. It was huge. There were thousands of people there. I was like, was it the Career Expo? He said, yeah, that's it. He said, and that's where I connected with my employer. And I was like, how cool is this? And if I hadn't asked the question, I never would have known that. But hearing those stories, that is fuel for me to keep doing this work, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I said, it's a little selfish on my part, and I wish I didn't require that sort of fuel, but it is. It definitely keeps me going.
Well, I was talking with some people earlier today, and the reality is you do need fuel, and having a purpose outside of yourself, that's not selfish. Reminding yourself of it, looking at it, I think we all need to look at wins, but we need to recognize that they're few and far between. And those wins are so valuable that we need to remember them, so that when we're in that empty tank place, that's a really nice way to put it. I talked with a guy who owns a rather large mining company, and he said, I have my buy days and my sell days. Days where I want to buy the business and days where I want to sell the business. And it's like, but when you look at those wins and think about what the why is behind what you're doing, and that's why I think Skills USA, Construction Ready is so important. I think what you're doing, even expanding to Florida. I mean, I wish you would expand north, but whatever. But expanding and bringing people together in that way, it is the learn and grow mindset. And it is the way that you've literally seen it happen where it's growing, and let me give you a little win here. This is something, I was actually going to say it to you off air, but I'll say it here. You have something that I think that you're able to give out to other people. And my son came here last year, and he was here walking around, and I teach through the same way my father taught me. I take him to work with me. And the interesting thing about what you're doing with Construction Ready is not everybody was blessed like me to have their dad take them to the job. And some people, because they didn't even have a dad, and some people because their dad just couldn't do that. And I think what you're doing is you're creating something here that is taking the kids to the job. When I talked with the young woman this morning, she commented on how she went with her mother to the trade school. Her mom had gone to the trade school for horticulture. And they went to pick up some plants or something. And she was later in life, like 24. And she was back home with her mom for whatever reason, kind of restarting some things in life. And she was there with her. And she walked around the trade school, and she's like, oh. And she walked into the welding area, and they're there. And she said to me this morning, she goes, I was dazzled. What a thing to say for a welder. She's dazzled. Of course, sparks. But she was dazzled, and it's like, she didn't have her dad to show her what my dad showed me. And I say that because in the trades, a lot of tradespeople, they're like, well, how'd you get in the trade? Well, my dad was in the trade, or, my brother, or whatever. Yeah. And that is common, but over the past 40 years, maybe 50 years, there have been less dads in the trades. Actually, I think this is accurate. There has been a downward trend. I know it's accurate. So there are less people to do that. So the necessity for things like this and companies to invest in this are essential.
Yes. So yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And you're right. Actually, some of our industry people have put it that way before. It's like we're simulating a construction job site here, right? I mean, it's not always easy to take students out on a job site, right? I mean, you run into some logistical challenge, and we do site tours. But you got to be very mindful of safety and everything. And this is just a really safe, non-threatening environment, to bring
Truly.
The kids out. And the other cool thing is you can demonstrate all the trades kind of at one time. A lot of times on a job site, the concrete may already be poured, right? And the concrete guys are gone, or maybe the electricians haven't showed up yet, right? Because they're
everybody
later on in the
says
project.
that about us all the time. We haven't showed up yet.
And so the cool thing about here is everybody is here at the same time, and you can explore all the different trades. And the other cool thing I love with the Skills USA contest is you see other young people actually doing the work. Whereas if you go out on a job site, it's going to be guys our age, or maybe, there may not be a ton of young people actually doing the work. And so I like that we're showcasing young people doing the skilled trades. So it's a cool environment. In fact, my daughter is walking around right now. Every year, I started bringing her 3 or 4 years ago. And this year, she was like, Dad, I definitely want to be at Expo. Well, the week rolled around, and it was finals week at her school. And they were like, they have a strict policy. You can't leave school during finals week. Well, she got out at 12 today, and we had somebody pick her up and bring her here. Yeah. So she's walking around. She loves it. And she's going to work in construction one day. There's no doubt in my mind. She just has has that that itch, for building. Now it's funny, she's starting to rule things out. She was like, oh, I don't want to do plumbing. She didn't even want to go in the plumbing world. But I said, well, let's check it out. How do you know? But she loved the heavy equipment, and I don't know where she is now. She kept walking, so she's exploring the different worlds. But it's neat. One other quick great story on welding. You sharing the welding story reminded me. We had a young woman in one of our high school programs. She tells the story of she was going to college. That was her plan, but she was coming up at the end of her high school year, and she needed a math credit to graduate. And she went to her counselor, and her counselor said, well, you could just take this welding class and it will satisfy your math credit. Well, guess what? She took the welding class and she fell in love with welding.
Come on.
And she abandoned the college path, and she's like, no, I want to be a welder. It sounds like it had a similar effect as the young woman's story. Once she went into the welding lab and actually did some welding, she was hooked. And anyway, it's so cool. She ended up going to the welding program, ended up competing in Skills USA welding. Went after she graduated, she went to work with Kubota, the tractor company, doing welding on their equipment. She did that for about 4 years. And now the cool thing is she's teaching welding in a high school construction program.
Come on.
Yeah. Isn't that neat?
The reality is we need this. I've said this, I probably said this last year when we were talking. I'm not so worried about the economy. I'm more worried about being able to turn the lights on.
Yeah.
I'm more worried about being able to flush the toilet, being able to have heat in the winter, being able to have air conditioning in the summer. Fun fact, I work with a company that does HVAC work, and they said people are not as irritable in the winter when their furnace doesn't work as they are in the summer when their AC doesn't work.
That's interesting.
It's like they view one as more of an emergency than the other.
That's interesting. I guess maybe you can get warm with other things, maybe blankets, maybe a fireplace, whatever.
It's true.
I guess with AC, it's like, there's only one way to get cool, right?
There is only, exactly. Well, Scott, I so appreciate you putting on this event and the investment that you've put here over the past almost 30 years now. And I think it's important, if you're listening, if you're building a business, if you're starting a career, he didn't start in the Georgia Congress Center. He didn't start with 10,000 people. You started with a few people in a parking lot at a Home Depot. And the importance of not giving up and pushing through that, whether you're coming out of college or whether you're coming out of high school and you're trying to figure out about college or life, whatever you decide to do, the key is to keep moving forward and not give up. And find something that is outside of yourself. You want to do work that's outside of yourself. Scott, I have one last question that I want to ask you. I ask it on almost every podcast. I believe that we learn the most from our mistakes. The reality is I hate them. I don't like that I make them, but they're the things that I have to deal with, and then I learn from them and it makes me better. And so it's my podcast, so I'm asking you, what's a mistake that you've made that you're willing to share with those who might be listening that might encourage them to not make the same mistake?
Yeah, so I love this question. I remember it from last year. I'm going to give you a different answer than I gave you last year.
Good. So you made more than one mistake. I'm glad. I was worried about that.
Exactly. So I will say this. I'll be 55 this year. I turned 55 in June. And I would say one mistake I've made through a big part of my life is I was not as positive and optimistic about things as I should be, right? And I just realized in the last few years, and it's funny how things work and how, like, a few different people, and it's not like I'm not a negative person. You can't be a leader and have vision and be negative. But I think positivity and optimism is so important, and the older I get, the more I realize how important it is. One of my favorite quotes is I think it was Albert Einstein said, "I'd rather be an optimist and a fool than a pessimist and right." And
whoever's quote it is, that's good.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
And I heard that a long time ago, but now it's like, as I get older, I'm like, that is so important. And it's especially important with our young generation, with our young people, right? We have a tendency to get negative about them. Oh, they don't have the work ethic that we had when we were, young, or they're this or they're that. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves, by the way, is hearing, older people, older generations talk negative about the generation behind us. Why do we do that? That drives me absolutely bonkers. And so
We've been doing that since the days of Archimedes.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're right. And I've observed it I haven't been around since Archimedes, but in my 5 decades, I was like, it seems like every generation says that about the generation before. But anyway, that goes back to being positive, being optimistic. And I know for my next 50 years, that is my goal, is every day to be more positive, more optimistic, because that's how you really make a difference in the world, not by being negative and talking bad about the next generation. That's not going to make great things happen for you or for them.
It's true. There's actual science behind being more positive actually opens you up to more opportunity, and those things happen then. And, a pessimist would say, that's bull. But it's true. It's true. I mean, think about it just as an employer or a boss. Those who have that optimistic and positive outlook versus those who don't. I'm throwing out a nugget here for you if you have a job. Those are the people that we want to promote more and we want to work with more, because that's just the way they are. There is enough negative that we don't need to look for it. It exists. It's real. And to your point, what does it add to our life to worry and stress over that and deal with that? It's like, listen, I don't want to have my head in the sand. I want to know what's going on. But the reality is, by me whining and complaining about that, and that's not what you were saying, but by me looking at something with a negative lens, it's not actually helping anything at all. It's
mindset, right? Just having a positive mindset. And again, bringing it back to Skills USA, Career Expo, everything we're doing here, especially having a positive mindset about our youth. That is so critical, not only for our industry and our future workforce, but just for society and life in general. We gotta speak hope and optimism into our young people. I think it's so critical for adults.
I agree too. And Construction Ready is enforcing that with the people that they work with in schools. You're having your next expo in Florida here in April. And what were the dates again?
April 29th and 30th.
April 29th and 30th. And then later this year, and I got to experience this last year, it was absolutely electrifying. Yes, I'm an electrician, so I use that word to describe it. But we were in this building when Skills USA had the competition, and it was, every room in the building was filled. It was kids everywhere. It was pretty awesome. And that happens sometime in June, right?
Yes, it's always the third week of June. And you know what's so cool? That was actually our original vision for this event. And I think I shared that last year. We traveled out to Kansas City back in early 2000 and saw the Skills USA national competition. And that gave us a vision for, hey, we got to get all this stuff in one building, because it does. When you go to nationals, our event is awesome, but nationals is like times 5 probably, right? And they have, as I shared earlier, we're in one building here. The Skills USA, they have all 3 buildings occupied, right? Plus every nook and cranny between every building.
They do.
And it's so cool too, going around Atlanta, you see the red blazers everywhere, the kids walking around. It's awesome. It's always the third week of June, and I will definitely be here. I always come in again to feed, to fuel the tank and reload. And I just love seeing our Georgia kids, because what happens from here, as you know, our gold medal winners in each one of these competitions goes on to nationals. So the gold medalists will be right back here in, the third week of June to compete. So it is awesome.
That is awesome. Well, Scott, thank you for taking the time. I know this is a super busy day for you, but taking the time to step up to the line and lift the view of the skilled trades, we greatly appreciate it.